Welcome to the Book Fair podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have an interview with Kathleen Troy. LGBTQ plus books are being removed from schools in Arkansas, and educators are pushing against book bans. Let's start with an interview with Kathleen Troy, author of the Dylan's Dog Squad series.
So organized. I love it.
You got to make sure that you are presenting yourself in a way that is taken seriously, especially because I'm passionate about children's literature. I don't think that it's, and you, even just talking before we started recording, I don't say books for kids. I say books written for young readers or media for young audiences. It is not about something being for kids. It's about a type of people who are currently in development. That's something that I'm just very passionate about. And I'm sorry, I'm just kind of getting a little rambly already.
No, I mean, it's interesting that you say that because in my Dylan Dog Squad series, the boys are 12. So it is young readers. And that is an audience of mine, but also an audience are people over 30. So most of the Dylan Dog Squad series are between 52 to 55,000 words, which is the cozy, limitations. And as you know, adult attention span is 8 seconds. So readers want to get right to the story. No James Michener where it takes 50 pages to cross the Atlantic. No, we want to be right there. So I do have a mixture of young readers and, as I say, people over 30. So.
Well, thank you so much. And we kind of just jumped into a conversation there. Kathleen, would you care to introduce yourself to the listeners and the topics, the books that we'll be discussing today?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Anthony, for having me on your program. I'm so excited to be here. So my background is dogs and also writing, and it's a wonderful combination. So because of that, I've developed a couple of series. One is the Dylan Dog Squad series. It's for young readers. It's about two boys and Dylan, an American Cocker Spaniel, and it's based on the true story of my dog, Dylan. So everything that Dylan does in the book, my dog, Dylan, has done in real life. And this is a dog that can count to 10, contact 911, knows American Sign Language, has a 500-word phrase vocabulary, and he can detect a dead body under 10 feet of water. I got him because he was basically written off. His owners thought he was a bad dog, and nothing could be farther from the truth. So that is how that series was born. And then we have the Never Believe series. It's based on Sage. He's a down and out junior con artist. He's from Las Vegas, and he's sent to live with family he never knew he had in Evansville, Connecticut. And he thinks that's the end of the earth. So he's going to stay there long enough to steal the car, the valuables, and go to Florida. He's actually very, very funny. But he hears about a murder with $1 million reward. He figures, for $1 million, I can stick around. Unfortunately, the murderer wants him very, very dead. So not looking good for the hero. All right.
And going off of Never Believe, because that was just the last thing you brought up, can you talk a little bit about writing a protagonist like Sage, who is a young person who is just starting their teenage years, who is already on such a harsh track for life with being a con artist, having a plot to steal a car? Can you go into writing that kind of a character and what building them out as a protagonist is like?
That's something that is a balance in that when you have a protagonist, he or she will have flaws because they have to be real. But in this case, Sage is, as I said, a down and out junior con artist from Las Vegas. You know he's had a hard life, but we don't go into that. You hear snatches of it here and there, and so your imagination helps you out in that respect. So as a writer, I needed to create Sage in my readers' minds so they would have an idea what he looked like, what he was like, what his background was like. But I didn't want to make him brittle. I didn't want to make him hard. I didn't want him to be someone without hope. And so that's why I created the character, he's actually very funny. I mean, he really is. He had this hard life. Yes, you know about that. But he's moving forward. And something I admire about him is he has amazing optimism. He is absolutely sure that his plans are going to work. And often they don't. But that's the way it is in life, isn't it? You know, we come up with ideas, and that's how we also grow. Not every plan is going to come to fruition. Not every plan is going to benefit you the way that you want it to, but you have to get out and try. And so the readers will see him try, and at times I'm sure they're going, no, 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 no. And he does it anyway. But they go with him on the journey. And that's what makes him human. That's what makes him real.
And you mentioned that that Sage was sent to live with family, and he immediately conspires a plan to escape. And do you see that as part of his optimism, or more so a part of like a survival mechanism that's built within him?
That's interesting that you asked that. It's a little bit of both. The truth is, he has never, ever mattered to anyone in his life. So he doesn't expect anything. He doesn't expect anything from other people. He doesn't sit there and say, oh, poor me, you know, this is sad, you know, blah, blah, blah. Instead, he's making his own future. There are times in the book where something dreadful happens and he acknowledges it and moves forward in the same breath. Okay, I'll worry about that later. Right now, I have to come up with a plan B. I have to go forward. So when he's sent to live with his family in Evansville, Connecticut, he doesn't expect them to like him or want him. It just doesn't occur to him because he's never had that before. And also his past has not been that great. So when he gets there, and actually he is sent to live with his grandparents, he's amazed that they seem normal and they actually want him. It just blows him away. It just blows him away. He wasn't expecting this. And for the next few pages or so, he's waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for them to turn ugly or mean or awful. And it doesn't happen. And he begins to realize, and this is when he begins to grow a little bit, that he just may have a chance at a decent life. And that is so amazing to him. And he starts to think about this is possible. And he starts to think about how he doesn't want to mess this up. And for once in his life, he gets to think about somebody else as well. And that's going to create difficulties in the story because in the past, it was just for himself. Well, this worked. Great. This didn't work. Okay, go on to plan B. But now he has to think about, well, what about my grandparents? If I do this, it may be harmful to them, and I don't want that. It's the first time that he has to think of other people.
And so Sage has had a rough life so far as a 13-year-old. He's had to make his own future, and he's never had anybody that really relied on him or that he could rely on. So typically in a story, you'll see the everyday life of a character, and then there is an inciting incident that kind of turns it on its head. When you're taking a character like Sage, who instead of having stability that gets flipped over, he has instability that gets flipped over. Would you consider Sage to be an anti-hero in some aspects?
A little bit, a little bit. He's likable. You know, I wanted to, you know, I mentioned before, I didn't want him too brittle. And he is a likable person. And one of the things that he faces is when he comes to his grandparents is he meets people in town that remember his father and they go, oh yeah, I remember Marty. And he's just waiting, you know, he's just waiting for some negative comment and things like that. And so he wants to not set the record straight because he can't. His dad was an awful person, but he wants to make his grandparents proud of him. Others around him, they realize that he's smart. He likes school. He's actually excited to be there. There's one point where some kids in the neighborhood come over and knock on the door and ask if he wants to come out and play. And he just kind of pauses for a moment and thinks, "Do I?" Because he's never had friends before. He's never stayed long enough in one place. And then he realizes that, yeah, yeah, I think I wanna go out and play. And that's pretty exciting to him. Those are things that maybe kids in normal family, shall we say that, they take for granted. But he's never had that before, and it's all brand new. It's amazing because there's so much that he knows, from his past life. He knows how to burglarize a home. He knows how to pick locks. He can lie, um, without the observer even knowing it. But these little things, these social graces, social amenities, just things that maybe other children take for granted in day-to-day living is brand new to him.
So you talked about Sage. He is waiting for the turn. He's talking to people in the town that knew his father, and he's waiting for the inevitable bad thing to happen because he's so used to it. And you used specifically the phrase, he is waiting for the other shoe to drop. Can you talk a little bit about that literary tool in writing, waiting for the shoe to drop, what that means, and building suspense and tension?
All right. So you always want to have tension and conflict in a story. It moves it forward. You don't want your protagonist to be too comfortable. You don't want the reader to be too comfortable. Sometimes you can actually have your reader almost be a character, a part of the story, and that they can be the one observing what's happening, and they could be cheering your protagonist on, or they could be the one going, "Oh no, don't do that. Don't do it. Oh, you did that anyway." Okay. So in Never Believe a Lie Twice, there are times when he has that moment, and he has that, arc where, things are going well, things are moving along for him, and the reader is like, comfortable. Okay, this is going in the right place. And then something happens and it flips the story on its ear. And it's a way to keep your reader turning the page. At the end of the chapter, you don't want them saying, "Oh, that was really nice. How fun." Okay. There you want them to say, "Oh, maybe I could just read a couple more pages, because I'm really not sure where he's going to go with this." So I like to have my readers a part of the story. I like them coming along with me. It's almost as if I'm holding their hand and pulling them through the story, and then I like to let go a little bit and have them going, "No, no, no, that couldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. Oh, but it did. So what's going to happen next?" I like to always have them thinking about that. I always want to write a story that is so much fun or so exciting that they can't wait to turn the page, and then, I'm sorry, readers, to say this, but I want you so sad when you get to the end because it's the end. It's like, "Oh, no, no."
That's one of my favorite things about literature, about books in general, is it is something that is unique in that if you put on a movie or a TV show, it'll keep playing in the background. But when you're a reader, you are an active participant. The story doesn't move unless you read. And that's kind of the thing about making the reader a character that I love. And the last question I wanted before we move on was can you just give us, without spoiling too much, what are the three books in the Never Believe series, and what are some of what are some of the things that happen in those books? What are the plots of those stories?
Right. So, let's see, try to tailor it without the giveaway. So in Never Believe a Lie Twice, as I mentioned, Sage is brought into this family, and he meets a relative that he just so admires. He so admires, and the reason why, when he was in Las Vegas, out of necessity, he used to spend time at the public library, and, the reason why he was there is because otherwise his father was not in, let's say, a good frame of mind at home. So it was a haven for him. And a librarian kind of took him under his wing and introduced him to books. And he read a book about freelance journalists. And he never knew there was such a thing in this world. And he started to think, well, maybe that could be a life for me, that I would like that. So in Never Believe a Lie Twice, he meets a relative who has a newspaper and he so admires him. He just so much does. And he wants to be like him. And he's done all the things that he wants to do in his life too. An Achilles heel for Sage is he loves money. And the reader understands this because he never had any, and so you understand why he would love it so much. But because of it, Sage makes some wrong decisions, and because of this character that I'm referring to is able to, shall we say, con Sage into thinking a certain way. And towards the end of the book, it just tumbles all apart. But Sage is able to recover, and so the reader is like, "Good." But then he realizes that by doing so, he is going to destroy his grandparents, the only people who have ever been decent to him in his life. And once again, he's at the crossroads. What is he going to do? Is he going to do the right thing, or is he going to do what he wants to do?
And so, um, Never Believe series is a little darker, and that contrasts with your other series, which is the Dylan and Friends series. Can you talk a little bit about what that book series is about, and some of the notable titles of that series?
Sure. Um, if I may, I'd like to tell you how it came about. Would that be all right? So,
Absolutely.
okay, so a friend of mine was an American professor in South Korea, and he was lonely. So he went to Walmart and bought Dylan, an American Cocker Spaniel. You can buy anything in Walmart in Daejeon, South Korea. So I said, "You need to train him." And he says, "Oh, what do you know?" And I said, "Well, I do know. I have a background in dog training, and you need to train him." He goes, "No, no, 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 no. I want a Bohemian dog." So he gets Dylan, and Dylan immediately becomes a serial chewer. And he eats all the furniture in the apartment, all the baseboards, all the electrical coverings. He eats the BMW, seriously, the interior. Um, and then it gets worse. My friend gets married, and Dylan decides to eat the wedding pictures and the negatives. And the wife says the dog is going to Kathleen. There. So they send Dylan to me. He's 18 months old. He doesn't know his own name and he's not potty trained. Obviously, very lazy here. So I am supposed to find him a good home. And I really have to say, within a week, we were on track. I started working with him. I started training with him. As I mentioned, he could do many, many wonderful things, count to 10, 500 word phrase vocabulary, and so on. So the Dylan Dog Squad series, it starts with Casey, that's the boy, and Dylan meet, and they've got 30 days to become a good dog owner, or else. Casey has always wanted a dog, and Dylan has always wanted a boy. So they're both going to try really, really hard. It doesn't go well, it doesn't go smoothly. Dylan has some misconceptions about what it's like to be with a family, but Casey works with him, and they create this wonderful bond of friendship. They have a best friend named Sumo, and, Sumo is, um, you know, kind of like, what should I say? Humor relief. He kinda points out the errors of their ways. So, in the first book, they, go after a team of dog nappers, and, they decide that, they're pretty good at this, and they become Dylan's dog squad. So in the subsequent books, which take place in different locations, they are doing something different in each one. And for example, the next one in Dylan's Dilemma, they are on Catalina Island off the coast of California. They're doing search and rescue, looking for a little girl named Lily. And then their best friend Sumo runs away. And so they have to find Sumo. In Dylan's Villain, the third book, which, by the way, got the Reader's Choice Award, They're bodyguards to Bailey, of celebrity chimp at the San Diego Zoo, and he is also a kleptomaniac. And so he's stolen a whole bunch of stuff and he's taken off. So they got to go find Bailey, get the stuff, get Bailey back on stage, and none the wiser. And the reader learns about chimps, which are very, very fascinating creatures. So in the fourth book, which is Dylan's Hawaiian Ghost, they're at a wonderful place in Oahu and having a great time. They're surfing and ziplining. By the way, people used to always ask me, does Dylan really like doing those things? I go, well, he doesn't say no. So I go, come on, Dylan, let's go surfing. So they meet Kakoa, a Hawaiian boy, and they learn that some bad people are stealing the healing waters of Sacred Falls in Oahu. And for readers who are unfamiliar, Sacred Falls was the most beautiful waterfalls in Hawaii. And in 1999, there was a massive rock slide and it killed 9 people on Mother's Day. And so, out of respect for the people who died, they sealed off the waterfalls. So here's the problem for Dylan's dog squad. The bad guys are in there stealing the waters, but they can't disrespect the Hawaiian culture. So they have to figure out a way to stop the bad guys. They have to go in, but they can't go in. So how are they going to stop them? So they come up with an idea, and of course, it goes really wrong. And they eventually saved the day. But that one got nominated by E.B. White Foundation for Compassion and Respect for Animals. So then in the next book, Dylan's Nose Knows, they're on a horse ranch in Lake Arrowhead, and they're going after a team of horse thieves who are stealing quarter horses. So the readers learn about horses and they learn how to ride, they learn how to groom a horse and how to catch bad guys. And then in the next one, Dylan's Millions, they're in Yosemite. And this got #1 from Amazon. It came out in June. In July, it got #1 for, I know you don't like the I term kids, but kids camping books. And but it did, and it takes place, I said, in Yosemite. And what happened is they're having a great time whitewater rafting. So the readers learn about whitewater rafting, and they're approached because a historian has been kidnapped, and it's all about a necklace called Juliet's Curse, and it dates back to 1858, where this beautiful, valuable necklace was passed down from daughter to daughter. Well, these team of bad guys, the Jackson brothers, break into Juliet's house to steal the necklace. They stab her 8 times. Not to worry, she lives. She claims to be a witch, and it turns out to be true because as they're going away, she puts a curse on them that whoever possesses this necklace will have an unfortunate end. And it proves to be true over the years. People have the necklace, bad things happen to them, the necklace disappears, it surfaces again. But now Dylan's Dog Squad has to find the historian and the necklace and end the curse. So they have a lot of adventure. The book is about the unbreakable bonds of friendship, is about pet responsibility. The readers clearly see the bond between Dylan and Casey. And this is something that I have throughout all my books is that, and I hope pet owners will realize this too, dog owners realize this too. You should always teach your dog sign language because at some time your dog's hearing will lessen. And if they know sign language, you can always communicate with your dog. So it can be something as, give them the work command, you put 2 arms out, your right fist taps your left, it means go to work. It can be, the finger to the lips that everybody knows, shh. But they should also be commands that are just wonderful. So in the series, often Casey will look to Dylan and give them the command for "I love you," the pinky, the index finger, and the thumb. "I love you," and it shows again this wonderful bond of friendship. They know each other the way nobody else does, and Casey puts him first and Dylan puts him first. So it's, as one reader says, it makes you want to go out and get a dog.
Mhm.
Uh,
And this whole entire adventure stems from a real life experience with a dog that was poorly trained or not trained, and then is Dylan in the book needed to shape up essentially. And so with Dylan's Dog Squad and the Never Believe series, there is this connecting thread of choices over a person's history of actions and maybe even redemption. Can you talk a little bit about why is that such a compelling character arc that is so prevalent throughout literature of all forms? Can you talk a little bit about writing those arcs and why that's important to you?
there's a couple reasons for that. One of the reasons is no matter how grim anything is, and there are times when you've maybe faced this in your life where you just think, I cannot see myself out of this problem. I just can't. We become so mired in it and we become so myopic. But the truth is, there's always hope. There's always an option. There's always a way to do something. There's always a way to figure something out. There really is. And sometimes all you have to do is take a step back and look at it. Try to look at it with fresh eyes. So I always like to create this atmosphere of hope. And there may not be a lot, but there's a little bit. And sometimes all you can do is try, but sometimes when you try, you may not get the result that you want, but you'll get an idea. Something will come to you. And yes, I talk about this in my books about abundant thinking, and that don't just go with the first answer. Think about it just a little bit more. What else is there? Um, so in one of the books, one of the characters is having a really difficult time. They think that they're going to lose their business and everything that's important to them, what they regard as important. And they come to realize that that's not the case. What they have here is an opportunity to do well. And they realize that everybody wants new clients and things like that. So they think about, well, how am I going to turn this around? How am I going to approach this? And they approach it from a different way. So in all my books, I want this hope. I want this arc. Um, I don't want to make it too easy for the reader. I want them trying to be struggling too. Gosh, how are they going to do this? How are they going to figure this out? And maybe give them an idea that they haven't thought of. I love it when I send a story to my editor and she'll make a comment about, well, I didn't see that one coming. Yay, I did a good job. Okay. All right.
And Kathleen, I like to ask the same question at the end of every interview with authors. It's a little more open ended and less specific than that last one. We talked a little bit about your intent as a writer and what you'd like to do. Kathleen, how do you see yourself and the work that you do as a writer?
Well, people always ask me if I work, and I say, no, not really. I have to say, I think I'm the luckiest person I know. I love what I do. I love the people I meet. I just love it. I love every single thing. But I also come to realize, and I think this is the part that thrills me the most. And I'm going to go back on a quote. And the quote is, you never know when you're making a memory. And that I've had people come up to me and say, your book changed my life. I remember I was at a conference one time and a reader came up to me. She wanted me to sign her book. It was a Dylan Dog Squad book. And she said, by reading this book, we realized she was talking about her mother, who is agoraphobic. She said that she could have a life outside of her house and that having a dog companion could give that to her. Not only would the dog give her a purpose, something to do in life, someone to care for, something to make her want to get up in the morning and think about other than herself, but it could be an extension of herself out in the world, out in society, that this was a dog that could give her emotional support. And so, she told me about how it changed her life, just having this dog, someone to care for, someone that needed her, and, how it opened up her world. She actually ended up taking a trip somewhere. She got on a plane. She hadn't been out of her house in many years. So I think things like that are thrilling to me. And, maybe I don't think about when then I write. I often think about how I just want to present a story to people, something that they'll enjoy, something that will resonate with them. In the Dylan Dog Squad series, I always try to take my readers different places and give them new opportunities. And I love books, obviously, but when you read, you're never lonely. You can go anywhere you wanna be, uh, and you can be anyone you wanna be. And, when I'm for example, I was at a school recently, and, one of the students asked me, "Do you read? When did you start reading?" And I said, "I remember when I could start picking out a book for myself, how powerful I felt. Because up to that time, my grandparents picked it out for me, my parents picked it out for me, and I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, and I picked out a book on South Africa. I probably didn't even know where South Africa was, and I read it, and I fell in love with South Africa, and I read more and more and more books about South Africa, and I vowed I would go to South Africa someday, and not only did I go someday to South Africa, but I went many, many times, and I ended up teaching in the bush country, and all because I read a book. And that's what I wanna give my readers. I want to give them something that they didn't have before, an adventure, an outlook, a thought, an interest in something, and just maybe make their life a little more exciting. Yeah.
Thank you. That was an interview with Kathleen Troy. Her book series, Dylan's Dog Squad, and others are available now. You can learn more about Kathleen and her work at kathleentroy.com. Next, we'll be covering some new releases. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Fair podcast, there are a few ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, favorite, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky at BookFairPod or go to patreon.com/thebookfair. On Patreon, you can find episodes posted early as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free, there are no posts hidden behind a paywall, and you can add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Finally, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Next, let's take a look at some new releases out this week, starting with How Girls Are Made by Mindy McGinnis. McGinnis delivers a blistering portrayal of girlhood via multiple teens grappling with sexism, male manipulation, intimate partner violence, and more in this tautly written, emotionally devastating novel set in small-town Ohio. After the boyfriend of Shelby, a social media celebrity, punches Shelby in the face, she's left with a broken nose and a viral scandal, and starts a new relationship marked by love bombing and emotional control. Simultaneously, when high-achieving Fallon discovers that her younger sister, a middle schooler, is alarmingly uninformed about sex due to her school's abstinence-only curriculum, she endeavors to shake up the system. Meanwhile, insecure teen Joby struggles to manage pressure surrounding social media beauty standards, comparing herself to girls like Shelby or her own mother, whom Joby believes men fawn over. Banding together, Shelby, Fallon, and Joby launch self-help and fitness training, an underground sex ed group disguised as a self-defense club. But even as they help others, they each grapple with personal conflicts. Via the white-cued teens' alternating first-person perspectives, McGinnis captures with searing intensity the psychological toll of growing up in a society that fails to equip girls with the knowledge, safety, or language They need to survive grooming, gaslighting, and systemic neglect. More than a cautionary tale, this is a call to awareness about prevalent patriarchal systems. This book is recommended for ages 16 and up. Next is I'll Find You Where the Timeline Ends by Kylie Lee Baker. As a descendant of a Japanese dragon god, Mina and others like her are tasked with protecting the flow of time, a duty that requires they be liars and guardians of secrets. Upon moving to Seoul at 18 with her doting parents, who are overworked and barely home, Mina's sole focus is to rise in the descendant ranks, hoping to gain access to classified information and uncover why her older sister Hannah was erased from the timeline, a punishment reserved for only the worst of traitors, and more importantly, how to get her back. While attempting to balance her training with schoolwork, she encounters teenage Yi-jun, a rogue descendant. Though his cuteness snares her attention, his words are ominous. Quote, "If I never see you again, then in 50 years, the world will end." Teaming up to seek Hannah, the duo undergo illegal time hops to alter reality in ways that defy the Descendants' code. And soon, Mina realizes that something sinister is brewing within the organization. Mina and Yejun's zinging chemistry propels both the fast-paced romance and time-leaping plot. Evocative descriptions of Seoul and its dazzling array of food leap off the page as Mina embarks on an emotional journey, strengthened by her familial bonds. This book is recommended for ages 13 and up. The last book to cover this week is The Last Ember, first in the Airmander Chronicles by Lily Berlin Dodd. A private school student and an orphaned boy embark on a gripping adventure in Dodd's confident and fiercely thought-provoking debut. 12-year-old science-obsessed Ava's heretofore sheltered life is thrown into chaos after she's unknowingly given a pilfered egg from a presumed extinct dragon-like race of creatures called Airmanders, attracting the attention of Eon Parnassus, a simple man of pure evil, who wants the unhatched Airmanders for destructive militaristic purposes. Ava hides the egg and decides to consult a scientist. Enter orphaned 13-year-old Dusty, a seasoned thief who attempts to swipe the egg from Ava's boarding school dorm room, only to end up absconding with both the egg and Ava. The unwilling duo bonds over their ill-gotten ovum and races to uncover its secrets before it falls into malevolent hands. Utilizing a dry-humored, omniscient narrator, Dodd admirably balances world-building with rip-roaring plot and complicated character interactions that crackle with witty buoyancy. Themes of queer identity, wealth disparity, and moral philosophy are threaded throughout this incendiary fantasy adventure. Ava has deep copper-brown skin, Dusty is fair-skinned, and this book is recommended for ages 10 to 14. And now, closing this week's episode with some news. Starting with a school district in Arkansas pulling books after parent complaints. Book challenges are nothing new, and questions of whether a book's content is age-appropriate for specific schools sometimes come up for legitimate reasons. However, Benton School District in central Arkansas came to a decision to remove a title from elementary and middle school libraries based on complaints from a single parent. The book in question, Joe, an adaptation of Little Women, sort of, by Kathleen Troy, was targeted by a single parent who wrote to the school saying, quote, "My wife and I believe that the intention of the author is to pervert children's sense of self and is therefore not only morally bankrupt, but also reveals the very sinister nature of the author." End quote. While the title in question is written for young audiences, the inclusion of queer characters is the primary reason behind the complaint, as the original message doesn't reference any sexual themes within the book. Benton is a heavily conservative area with previous attempts on the city and county level targeting LGBTQ+ titles within Saline County Library. In April of 2023, the library director refused requests from county officials to relocate books, which led to the county allocating hiring and firing for library staff to a local judge, who immediately fired the library director. A wrongful termination lawsuit on the basis of the First Amendment is currently set for July 2026. While there are advocates for the freedom to read within Benton and Saline County, the school district unfortunately sided with censorship in this case. After removing books from library shelves, the North Little Rock School District ordered staff to block students' digital access to nearly 50 LGBTQ+ books. Parents are expressing opposition. However, there is very little recourse at this time. Next, moving to more positive news, starting with a Nevada school district rejecting a proposal to circumvent the current book challenge process. Most school districts throughout the United States have a similar process for challenging books in classrooms and library collections. A form is filled out or a written complaint is made to the school about a specific title. It is reviewed by library staff, and in some cases, there is a review board that votes on whether a title needs to be pulled from school shelves. Clark County School District's current policy includes a committee made up of teachers, librarians, administrators, and parents to make the decisions on challenged books, giving power to people within the school and the community. This helps combat challenges that come from censorship groups or individual people without children in the school from making challenges based on religious or personal beliefs, overriding the will of the greater community and education professionals. A proposed change in the regulation was put forth for Clark County School District that would have given full control of book bans to the school district's superintendent, completely bypassing the current process with no formal opportunity to appeal the superintendent's decisions. Read Freely Nevada, a local coalition of librarians and freedom to read advocates, released a statement opposing the proposal, calling it an unprecedented power grab. The group's founder and executive director, Nicole Beer, also leaked an email showing a local high school principal urging administrators to use the Moms for Liberty website Booklooks to screen library content. Thanks in part to vocal opposition from Read Freely Nevada, CCSD announced that the policy draft was no longer under consideration, but did not answer if there were still plans to revise the current regulations regarding book challenges. Closing this week's episode with a similar story from Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs School District 11 is scheduled to hold a vote over a policy change that would give full control of removing challenged books to the school district, taking the control of school librarians and staff away. The policy proposal has led to vocal protests by the community and school staff. One teacher said, quote, "We're being treated like that is beside the point, that we are not professionals, that we can't make decisions about the curriculum." End quote. While some states are quietly shifting power for book bans to smaller and smaller bodies, Colorado Springs stood up in force, with over 100 people gathering in protest against the policy proposal outside of the D11 administration building. The school board is set to vote on the new rules at a later date, but the protests against the policy demonstrate that Colorado Springs educators and parents are standing strong in favor of the freedom to read. This will conclude another episode of the Book Fair podcast. If you'd like to learn more about any of the stories covered today, you can find links to news sources at patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free. There are no posts hidden behind a paywall. And all I ask that you do, if you wish to support the show, is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.